Welcome to All the Things with the Magical Cartographers. We're your hostesses,
Mel, Changemaker and Goddess.
Jocelyn, Story Warrior.
Ish, Soulscape Strategist.
and KJ, Expressive and Compassion Creatrix. We're here because we're sick of seeing women unable to be themselves or fulfill their potential because of tired old systems and paradigms. With these jam sessions, we're going beyond surface level conversations. If you're done talking,
We're ready to be seen and heard.
Hanging with us will inspire you to map a new way forward.
In your relationships, career, health, and how you show up for yourself in the world.
are you ready to join us? Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify.
I love
We
that.
made it. We made it. I know. I always forget that there's that nice little intro of us in the beginning. Like, oh, that's us. We're so official.
I
Hello,
love our
hello.
song.
I know. It's so
Thank you.
jazzy.
Yeah. Thank
So
you, Mel.
jazzy.
You chose it.
I did. Well, I chose a lot of them. So you guys narrowed it down.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone. Let me just see, make sure. We have one. Hey, Candy, how are you? Cousin Candy is here with us. Welcome.
Hi.
That's the one thing I will say. If anybody ever wants to join us, like, you get all the love instantly.
All the
we got a lot of
love.
love to give. So, welcome, ladies. Welcome. Happy summer solstice.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, indeed.
It is summer solstice. It is the longest day of the year. Jocelyn tried to bum us out by saying, like, every day now is gonna get shorter. No, we gotta just appreciate this
The
one.
only person that is sad about the summer solstice is Jocelyn.
Right.
Well,
It's just barely by
At
freezing
the
where she
beginning
lives.
of the
That's why.
end, like the days get shorter, like by minute.
well, and I have to say right now, sunset here is at like 9:18.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it
right.
stays light here till almost 10:30 because it's a very
mean,
slow sunset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You
that's
have blackout
nice.
curtains.
Yeah. It's really hard to go to bed. I normally go to bed at about 9, and it's still like light, and the birds are chirping. It's very hard.
That's crazy. That wouldn't work well for our summer party. So, we have a big party in July every year. It's coming July 2nd. Anybody who's watching in the Charlotte area, or cousin, you want to come on down for the party. But we do outdoor karaoke. So I project it onto a big screen. But we can't start until it gets dark. And so that means here we can't start karaoke. I start checking it at like 8:30. So it's usually like 8:45 before we can get started. So we've only got like 2 hours outside with karaoke, and then we come back inside. And folks who stay, which is most of the folks, we just do it inside the house because I live in an HOA. So anywho, so happy June. It's also the beginning of Cancer season. Ooh, ooh. And I don't know, I feel like I had a good burst of energy today. I've been ripping and running, but this is the first day in a while that I don't just feel like exhausted by life. I feel super busy, but like energized from it. How are you ladies feeling?
Yeah, I agree. I think this, compared to where I was feeling like a month ago, I like come around the corner. I'm like,
Good.
oh yeah, okay. Well, and it also helps that we're starting to get summer now. And so it's like,
Right.
oh yeah, there's some sunshine. So it's
Yeah.
light till 10:30 and I want to be outside because it's not raining sideways.
Right.
So yeah, I'm feeling the energy happening.
Nice.
I am not.
So does that mean that I'm going to ask KJ to lead us in settling in then, if you're not feeling it right now?
If I leave today, we're all falling asleep.
I know.
Okay, I can lead us in to bring us.
Yeah, so
bring us
yes,
back.
we started this cycle of like leading us in and leading us out, and so that we can stay consistent. And everybody who's here with us watching, whether you're live or whether you watch later on, we're all kind of in the same space and in the same place. So I will let KJ lead us in before we start talking about what might feel today kind of like a heavy subject, but we'll talk about it on the other side.
Sure.
KJ, take it away.
Yay! Well, if possible, my friends, I
Yes.
know we might be sitting. If you can stand,
Mm.
I know I'm already asking a lot, but this will be very simple and I think it'll be worth it. And it'll be very
Don't stand
quick.
too quickly. Might get a vasovagal and just pop over.
Exactly.
Goodness,
And
I gotta stand a lot of that.
my ask of you, my loves, is to stand and just simply wherever you are right now. You could do that too. You could wave your hands in the air. Feel where your feet are contacting the ground. Just notice where your feet are touching the ground. Okay. Feel the way they feel on the ground and almost like suction cups. Like be secure, connected to the earth, because what I'm going to ask you to do next is to start swaying from your ankles. Just using your ankles to start to sway and move yourself from side to side. Let's just go side to side. Just sway slowly from the ankles, first from side to side, and then now forward onto your tiptoes, back onto your heels. And then just experiment with how that feels to go forward and backwards. And then maybe after 2 or 3 passes, go side to side again. And all of this is to help you find your center of gravity. Find where you are. Where are you in this moment? Where are you in this room? Are you feeling connected to this ground, this earth? Sometimes it's helpful to put your hand on your belly or your heart just to notice. Can you tell when you hit center as you're swaying? Have you this whole time maybe been sitting back or sitting forward, but not centered? So maybe 2 or 3 more passes from side to side and then forward to back. And it doesn't have to be fast. I don't want you getting motion sickness. I don't want you dizzy. But just notice if you can find your center of gravity. And once you do find it, take a deep breath and channel your energy and your breath into that point, into that center. And when you're ready, if you were sitting, you're welcome to return to your chair, but also keeping in mind, maybe keeping your hand on your belly or heart at the same time to remind you where your center of gravity is when you sit too. All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, KJ.
Yeah.
So now that you have me up, I feel like standing here since I do have a fancy standing desk that I've attached everything to. So when I move it,
Right.
everything moves with me.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm
So
standing too. I've been sitting for the last couple hours, so I'd like to stand
yeah,
myself. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Cool.
So this feels good.
Good.
But see, now you got to watch me swaying like I've
yeah,
been
we're gonna
drinking
watch you
today or
sway.
something. So
Way is okay. You're just trying to find your
You just
center.
sway that sexy self of yours.
that's
Now we need
right.
some
That's right.
music.
I know. See, I didn't know I needed to cue up some sexy music, and so we still owe everyone karaoke, and we still
Oh, yeah.
now we owe everybody like dance moves. So okay, list of things to do. So
Nobody wants to watch me dance.
I mean, entertainment's
I
entertainment,
might.
right? I mean, the whole point of what we do here, and people who join us and watch us and say hi if you're here watching. The whole point is, seeing this diverse group of ladies talking about things that affect our lives, and some of us can dance better than others. Some of us can sing surely better than others. Some of us can play
Yes.
instruments, and some of us write. And hey, Carmen. And so we all have lots of skills, and they're on display all the time. So I just met with a friend of my friend Anne, who I've talked about before, and we were just talking about creating this group of like amazing women to start doing some trainings together, right? And why not? I mean,
Mhm.
if you know people who are amazing, why not do amazing shit with them, right? Like, why
Absolutely.
are
That's
we
what
doing
makes
Mhm.
it
stuff by ourselves?
magical.
Exactly.
Stop doing stuff by yourself and find amazing people. I mean, men are amazing, but especially amazing women. I'm just gonna say that. So today we are talking about episode 7, which if you haven't watched, if you haven't listened to the podcast yet, it's really a brainstorm. So anyone who's watching, again, whether you're watching now and want to respond, or if you watch later, pop in the comments. We started brainstorming this larger conversation around the patriarchy and what does that even mean? Why do we even care? What the hell is it, right? And it was really important for us to literally go through the process of brainstorming, and we want to share that with you because it isn't just about us and our experience, right? So again, we're all about sharing our knowledge, sharing our understanding of what's going on in the world and why, and trying to come up with solutions together, right, instead of alone. And so it's important for us to hear from you what is important in your life, how these things are affecting you, and how maybe we can help, or we can talk about it in some, episode or podcast, or you join us live, or, any of those amazing things. And so that's the crux of what the last podcast was about, was getting us ready for some of these conversations. And um, Ish, I'm gonna hand over the mic to Ish for a second, because she has been our catalyst for talking about the patriarchy, especially. And
I'm asking for
and
a definition again.
no, I think I have it if you don't.
No, I think I can do the gist of it.
Um, but the reason that we're coming here, and again, this seems like kind of heavy or a little more um, academic than perhaps we normally are. It's because, just like when we talk about issues of race, or issues of, as we talk about these issues around gender, it's important for us all to be kind of on the same page about what this thing is and how it's affecting our lives. And since the patriarchy is really like the dirty ground that everything else is kind of built on top of, we thought it was really important to be as thorough as we can in describing what it is, and again, ask for some feedback as we move forward. So Ish, if you would be so kind as to give us the working definition that you kind of gave to us, and maybe talk a little bit about why this is really an important issue to you, and why, if you feel comfortable with that.
So, the just a really short definition of patriarchy that I think sums up what it is. It's a system, whether it's society or government or any kind of entity in which men hold the power. They've created paradigms and ways of doing things where they hold the power, and women are largely excluded from it. And I say largely excluded from it because sometimes there is a perception of power that's given to women that really isn't. It's just sort of a way that the systems have come about to make us believe that we actually have more of a say than we actually do. And the reason that this is important to me, there are several reasons. But the biggest one is that I think I feel very connected to family history, generational sort of things that happen. And I think in the culture that I come from, it's very much that the men hold the power. And I talk about that from, I'm a South Asian Indian, and I think sometimes people will think that South Asians here are different than South Asians in India, but there's still a lot of things that have been brought over. And then in my own sort of family, there has been the way that basically women are in my family have been made to or told what their life is going to be like and what they're going to do. The decisions have been made for them. So the power, the control over the decision making about what they want to do is not theirs anymore. And it's also my husband's side too, as well. And then women are made to sort of feel like, oh, well, you're giving these things up because you're giving it up for the family because you're raising the family, and that's so important. And that's what we've been relegated to is that we somehow hold all of the responsibility for raising each generation, and then also hold the blame if that generation doesn't turn out or the kids don't turn out well. But that's like everything. And then so I've seen a lot of people in my culture, but also too in Western society too. I think women suffer from the same thing, even though there seems to be more choice. There really isn't. And in the medicine world, I see a lot of physician women who really struggle with being a mom and being a physician and also all of the other things that we are, because we're all really complex human beings at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And so there's not just one aspect to us, but still it's those things that we're told about how we should be. And then we feel bad for it until we get to the point where we're like, why did I waste all of these years believing that? Mm-hmm. But it's really hard to undo that too.
Yeah.
Very long. So apologize.
No. I mean, again, it's the tricky part about these conversations is that to some degree, right, just like when we talk about issues of race, and, there's always people on the fringe who are like, oh, but we had a Black president, and oh, look, Blacks can vote, and, whatever else. We're not hanging Black people in the streets. That one's debatable, but.
No, we're just shooting them.
Right. But the point of talking about the patriarchy specifically is that even before issues of race had an opportunity to get to the fore, the patriarchy, these systems that Ish mentioned, have been, again, that dirty foundation that even racism was kind of built upon, right? And so for us, as four women, we identify as four women here, hey, Carrie, we all see issues of gender inequality, right? And so often, I think for me, and I'm gonna from here, I think I'm gonna jump over to KJ in a second, but we see these issues of gender inequality, and today it's easy to minimize them and act like, well, it's this job, it's this location, it's this group of people. Like there's something that we could solve, like we could fire the bad people and gender equality would be realized, right? And that's not the case. We could, punish people who treat women unfairly in some way, and that will somehow fix it. But that's not the reality, right? And for us in these conversations has been, even for us, we needed to figure out how to talk about where these things are bubbling up in our lives, in different areas of our lives, and how and why, and how to start working through those. And so that's really what this last podcast episode was about. And again, I'll say that, we really do want to hear from all of you about your experiences and these issues around gender, even if you're not sure about, you don't need to know the history of the patriarchy and so on. but thinking about this in a much deeper way, thinking about equality as far as gender goes, in a much deeper way than we have in the past. And so, KJ, I was going to say to you, I know, as someone who works with folks to do counseling and therapies and things like that, I'm curious, and we didn't talk about this before, but I'm curious if some of these issues, while we've been exploring them, while we've been talking about them, if you've seen this, kind of in real life with clients, scenarios that are starting to bubble up a bit more for you around gender issues and around these systems that were set up shittily. I know that's not a word, but I'm going to use that word right now. And so I'm I'd be curious to just hear, some of your experience if you've seen that. And if not, you can say, no, Melissa, those aren't the kinds of folks I work with.
Well, because you know me well enough, and because I think that's what draws us together, this particular group of women, that's exactly who I work with, actually. I actually saw a client today who is a woman of color, and she is in, I suppose, what we would call maybe a masculine field. It's in, and then we could talk about that too. Why is it that we know that there's this difference, this gender difference in the way that our systems have been expressed. So when I say this, you'll see what I mean. She's a recruiter for a startup company that is in marketing and sales, but she how do I say it? She actually just came to me this week to talk about how frustrating it was because she believes she's been passed over for a promotion, and the person who got the promotion is a male who has a history of sexual harassment in the company. And he was given a promotion to senior manager, her senior manager. And she had experienced some harassment from him in the past. And she was just like, then what am I doing here? If this is the culture, if this culture is going to promote this type of individual, why would I even stay here? So, yes, I do work with people who are experiencing this on a very real level, a very frustrating level. And the way that we worked through it, or the way that I'm helping guide her through it, is by writing down and actually bringing to the table her receipts of what she has done for the company, evidence of the value that she's proven for the company. She was the top salesperson. She was the top recruiter last quarter. And yet people forgot to mention that, or maybe that wasn't in consideration. Yeah. So, right. So we just sort of started working with receipts, and we started gathering all of the evidence to the otherwise. And she presented it. She had an opportunity for a one-on-one with her manager. She presented her evidence. And she said that she watched him sort of like sit back and wither, and then also defer it. He was just like, well, this wasn't my decision, this promotion. If it were up to me, exactly putting it off. It's so and so. It's the higher ups. It's this. Again, what it did is,
if it were up to me, it solely would have been a woman who got this role. But it's not up to me. What can I do?
Exactly. And so she saw through that too. She'd said, actually, it is up to you. You're my supervisor. You get to advocate for me. And so she actually gave him a lesson on all the ways that he could advocate for her as an equal boss. And then she says, I'd really like to know what the qualifications were that sent it so that the higher ups understood that this toxic person who I have proof, she has text proof of some of the harassment that he doled out. She says, I'm just curious what your metrics are. And so
There was some
Good.
silence, right? I
Good for
know.
her. Yeah.
I know. But she was devastated. She was
Oh,
devastated when she learned that that this other person was promoted over her, and it was a person who embodies all the qualities that we're talking about today. This
Yeah.
oppressive, harassing, um, misogynistic
Mhm.
um, uh, qualifications, and they get rewarded.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that for us, especially with having these live episodes, is an opportunity for us to engage with you all so much more, right? I mean, the podcast is just us generally, and we're talking about what we talk about. But, the reason that we are putting this out there is, as Ish has pointed out many times in our podcast, especially, is it's not that we have all the answers, right? We don't. Big sign. We don't have all the answers. I want to be clear with that. But when you have people to talk about these things with, if you don't have, your group of women like I do, right, here and beyond, then talking about these issues to try to see what might work for you, right? Even in just KJ's example, um, those are reasons to have these types of conversations, right? Because if maybe it hasn't happened to you yet, but next week, oh, I got a new boss, I got this whoever that comes in, right? And so again, I really want people to, as comfortable as you feel as we go through this, and this is going to be like, this is our like summer conversation, just so you know, the podcasts that are coming out over the summer will be on these issues of the patriarchy. And when we get together here, we really do want to talk about how these particular segments are affecting our everyday lives and your everyday lives. So, again, please feel as comfortable as you can, as you are. Let us know. You don't have to type something in the main chat. If you can DM any of us if you're going through something, or if you'd like to share an experience. But I'm going to just keep saying that so that people know, like, we're serious. Like, we really do want to hear from you. This isn't a, oh, it sounds good, or, I'm trying to drum up some business. No, this is conversational, and this is about support. And this, for us as four women, this is about us supporting each other and moving that out into all of you who love us and who are here with us. So yeah, so I'll get off of that soapbox. So Jocelyn, I wanted to bring you in and talk about, a little bit, as we were, again, kind of brainstorming and thinking about how we wanted to start having these conversations. One of the points that I really love that you brought up when we were talking about, after we have this understanding and then we start figuring out who we are, it was this idea of, how do we know when, like, kind of the difference, I forget your lovely terminology, but essentially, how do we know, like, we haven't gone too far in this idea of belonging, right? So, I mean, part of this journey for everyone is going to be understanding what's happening, the foundation, and seeing in our lives how our lives are affected by the patriarchy and all of its tentacles. But part of that is, as an individual, learning to adapt in whatever cultures, societies, communities that you live in. There's this kind of dance that we have to do between, this is what I'm striving for, and when's the realization that either that thing I'm striving for isn't even a thing that I want, or I've overcorrected now in order to belong, and I've created this different version of myself. So, I mean, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but that's something that really came across very strong to me. That point really stuck with me in this last episode, and I'd love if you could share a little bit about your feelings on that, or about anything. I just like hearing
About
your
anything. Well,
input.
I'm thinking about when we first start thinking of ourselves as belonging to something. and how, and usually that comes up, as children, we belong to our parents. They're our world, or whoever our guardians are, whoever the family quote unquote unit is, we belong to a smaller group. And then we start, because as children, we just kind of have to belong to that group. It's not a choice so much when you're really little. And then that belonging starts shifting outwards, and we start getting experience with the world and thinking about who we want to belong to, or who within the terms of like groupings, who do we want to belong to and with, and what groups want us to belong to them and what groups don't want us to belong to them, and what we do and are willing to do to change ourselves or to become something we're not, in most cases, to belong to that group or to fit into a group that doesn't want us to belong to it. And I think that gets really complicated, because you start this dance with yourself and with society and with other individuals, and you're constantly shifting who you are against who you want to be and how do you want to fit in. And I think in some ways, today's world makes that easier. It makes it both easier to fit into other groups and harder in a weird sort of way. And I think we're much more willing to accept the possibility of different groups that we never would have thought about as being possible, because we've talked about the tool of technology before and how it has allowed many of us, the four of us included, to find each other. I mean, we found each other and created a group. I mean, we belong within each other. And so and what I find really interesting, and I think about teenage years, when you're really like, who am I? Where do I belong? Now, I'm in my 40s and I still think the same thing, but it seems way more, I think as a teenager, I was way more conscious of where I didn't want to belong and not where I wanted to belong. And so I was seeing everything as, well, I don't want that. Well, I don't want that. Well, no, I don't want to be with the cheerleaders. I don't want to, I'm not part of the nerdy kids. And so I was always trying to figure out where I didn't want to be. And usually that just sort of ended up with me doing what I kind of wanted to do. Yeah. Because at some point, with my attitude, more often than not, I didn't want to be with anybody. I mean, it was like, no, not interested. And so I think we end up in this dance, and we're still dancing with it. But I find now, at this point in my life, I'm way more willing to say, hey, let's all do something. I mean, we talked about that. Don't go it alone, find people to make amazing shit with. And I love that, because it's more active. We now get to pick, and we're more engaged. Our agency is there with where do we want to belong. And if there's not something we want to belong with, it's like, hey, I want to burn shit down. You three ladies come with me. I mean, that's what you said, Mel. And hey, here we are.
That's how I pulled everyone in with the promise of burning shit down.
Yeah.
And did anyone have gasoline and matches?
Yeah. And we were like, yeah, we want to get in on this fire stuff. So I think about that and how we belong to something, and the machinations and the contortions we go through in our lives. How do you wake up and find you're in something you don't want to be there anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, because and I think societally, I think socially, we're going to start seeing some of that. What do you do when you wake up and what you thought you belonged to was one thing, and well, whoops, that's not what you signed on for. I'm the desire to belong is, I mean, we're humans. We want to be part of we're herd animals, right? So I think we're really willing to jump into things. And what I find really interesting is what do you do when you wake up and you're like, crap, whoops, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
That's not the camouflage I want to wear anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to Ish's point, when we're talking about belonging within a patriarchy, especially for someone who identifies as a female and who is seen societally as a woman, right? That it's like our responsibility to raise the next generation, and whatever happens is, well, I won't say whatever happens, whatever goes wrong is our fault.
Right.
Whatever goes right is like, yay, society did a great
That was
thing.
an accident.
Mm.
Look what just kind of happened spontaneously.
Right.
That
I
was a
mean, I often
one-off.
think, I won't go down like the religion rabbit hole, but I often think, wonder about that in religion. It's like when something great happens and it's a blessing and God did that for you. But when shit goes bad, it's like, oh, I guess you didn't pray hard enough for that. Right. And
Been
that's
eating that
often
apple.
how, women are perceived in our society. Like, yes, we applaud you. We applaud your martyrdom for, raising children and, maybe whether you work or stay at home, but isn't that kind of your job? Right. And so, as we continue these conversations, a lot of that's going to also delve into, on a larger scale, once we're out into community, like how do we fit? Ish is our perfect example within this group as our STEM representative, right? As a doctor, as a medical doctor, it's like, she's in the almost epitome of masculine jobs, roles, right? And how does that work, right? What are the not only the challenges, but just the everyday struggles that, not just Ish, but every woman in that position has to go through, and why, right? This is, again, going back to the importance of understanding that the patriarchy is not just one thing that can be solved. It's a system that needs to be understood, and all of us, regardless of gender identity, has to be working towards fixing things.
Well, and jumping in here really quick, I remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s when technology and computer technology and programming where I got my start began. And it was so exciting because it was like the great equalizer. It was your brain. I mean, there were
Right.
women in the field. I worked for women-owned companies that were only women working there, that were, there was this sense of suddenly it's like, man, we can own companies. We can do all of these things that as a kid growing up, I didn't really see those kind of role models.
Yeah.
And it shifted. And that stinky, insidious patriarchy, I mean, women started falling out of tech. They just slowly started slipping away out of technology. And that, I think, is really where I started seeing that you can belong to something and want to belong to something and still get booted out and that was in my really early 20s, and have no real recourse. I mean, it's just like, yeah, no, we don't want you anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not like we don't want you, get the hell out. It's the death by 1,000 cuts. One little job, one project you don't get, one thing you don't get. And it's just the slow dripping away of something.
And how easy it is to normalize that behavior, because there is a system in place that rewards men for certain achievements and just the opposite for women, right? Almost punishes us for wanting to do more of those things.
Well, and it's so much like if you just sort of think about sort of baseline sort of things, like, because I I know that there are going to be people who are like, oh, but women are, they're in all, they're managers or this, they're that, they're the other. But if you look at that, you have to really sort of think about what do they have to do to fight to get into those positions. And what we are continually having to do, like when are meetings set up? Like if you have a 7 or 7:30 meeting and you've got to get your kids to daycare or to school or whatnot, and again, it's these traditions. Oh, well, the guy is going to be there because the woman is going to figure out how to do that. And she may not be able to be there. Or if she's late, well, why are you late? It's like it's thinking about those things. Why do we have to have a 7 or 7:30 meeting?
Nobody has to have a meeting that early.
And I'll say in medicine, like right straight up, it's like we have to have a 7 or 7:30 meeting because we gotta have a clinic, we gotta start a clinic. Well, that is a roundabout way of like really like supporting the patriarchy, right? Supporting these systems that don't really and to be honest, it doesn't really fit for men anymore either, because there are a lot of men who have been like, oh, they want to be the father. They want to do as much, as their partners are doing.
Yeah.
And raising their children. I mean, there is changing of paradigms. And I'm going to get I'm getting a little triggering maybe and controversial here, because I want people to really start thinking about how these systems are like really ingrained in us. So I'm going to mention infidelity here for a second. And not because it's a bad thing, but oftentimes I see women and it's like, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, well, this woman they're like really focused on the woman that their man had or their woman had a affair with. And it's like all about this person. And it's like, I'm not saying that person didn't do something wrong. There's a trust that's been broken, but the trust has been broken between you and your partner.
Right.
So why do we focus on the other person? And then on the flip side of that, then the partner's like, oh, you're not there for me. You haven't you're emotionally absent. We don't have sex like we used to have, or all those kinds of things. That's all underlying. Like, why is that? So the woman is constantly bombarded with messages that you could have done better. You did something. You either did something wrong that your partner stepped out on you, which is bullshit, or the person that your partner stepped out on you with, they're evil, which is also bullshit too. Because I mean, you can be a wrong and you can do a wrong and not be evil, but that's a baseline of the system of these paradigms that focus us on things that take us away from the real issues. Right? And support these systems of power, because in that situation of infidelity, which is it's really hard for people to experience that and go through that, it's still the power is in the hands of and quite honestly, I mean, I know I'm trying to be sort of like gender neutral and equal here, but at the end of the day, it keeps the power in the hands of the man, because there's not a lot of responsibility, right? And then if the partnership falls apart, who's left holding the bag? Oftentimes it's the woman without the financial support. So if you're married for 20 something years, it's like, and you and your partner decided you're going to stay at home and take care of things. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, but you can work. Well, but for 20 years I did work. I took care of the kids. And now you're telling me like, that's it? No, I mean, so, and we still experience that to a large degree in this society. So I am trying to be triggering a bit, because I do, when people are like, oh, we've moved forward. Yes, we have moved forward, but have we truly obtained and realized the freedom? And my answer is even nowadays is still no, we haven't.
Yeah. I mean, not legally, not even in an imaginary sense. I mean, there are everyday examples of, and that, again, what we want is to hear from you all about these examples of how you're seeing it, how you're experiencing this inequality. And I will just stop to say that, yes, we are talking about society and gender in a very binary male female way, and that is not to dismiss any fluency, any fluidity in gender identity, but societally, right, the way that people are treated historically, especially, and systems that have been built are based on whether people think you are male or female, right? The people who are causing the problems don't care necessarily how you identify, right? There's this binary, and if you're not me, man, then this is your place, right? And so I just, want to be clear that we're not excluding anyone, and certainly anyone who has lived as a woman can, testify to, many of these issues. And so I think, that's an important distinction as we talk about, today and things that are happening now around issues of gender inequality. That certainly plays, a big role in a lot of legislative actions and things like that are taking place right now. But I just want to be clear that that's when we're talking about the patriarchy, that the patriarchy is not, doesn't give a shit about any other system than a binary one, right? And so that's really the premise of what we're using here. Go ahead.
And you bring up a really good point, Mel, is that, and this I don't think is really talked about or explored, that women who are transgender, what is their experience with the patriarchy, which I don't, that's, I mean, if anybody is a transgender woman, I really would love to hear your perspective, because in my perception is it's even like 10 times more. It's, it's just 10 times
Is you're getting it from both sides.
You're getting it from both sides, but really, like, the men that are ingrained in the patriarchy are like, oh, you are so different than what my paradigm is. I got to do something to, like, keep your voice down. And I don't even know what that, like, I know what I feel like as being born a woman and living as a woman, but I don't know what that experience is like, being born into a body that you don't identify with, and then you come out and identify as a woman. I don't know. I mean, I think, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody really explore that.
I mean, I have friends who I've asked some questions about, and we've talked as a group, we've talked about, we don't have that experience, and so reaching out to folks who are willing to either come on live with us or come on the podcast and share that experience, because we don't want to pretend like we understand it, and because we don't. I understand the shit that's happened to me, right? And some of what has happened to people who look like me in all these different little buckets, right? But that's it. I'm not going to claim anything beyond that. And I think it is important, even from a very, like, if you step back and think, like, if you were, raised many years, let's say you lived as, and society treated you as male, and now you are living as female, imagine what that must feel like, the difference there, because I would bet, and again, we're going to find some help with this, I would bet that the differences are like the biggest smack in the face, like Will Smith and Chris Rock slap in the face, very big and ridiculous, right? Because it is that severe. And as someone who has always lived as a woman, a lot of this, and we talk about this in the next episode, we talk about this, how ingrained, right, these and normalized these systems are. So, women we do it to each other, we do it to ourselves, we perpetuate a lot of this, a lot of these systems, because either we've never known any different, because it is so normal, it's so everyday, and when I say we all have to do this work, we all have to do this work continuously. It's not a thing like, oh, I got it, and now.
And I think part of the power of the patriarchy is keeping us all in these groups that we belong to, and then not wanting us to step over and say, hey, how do you live? Hey, let's have a conversation. Can our 2 groups get together? Well, what about our 6 groups? What about our 28 groups? Because when you're keeping everything binary, you're keeping everything isolated.
Yeah.
And that's,
Well, and you keep it unemotional.
exactly.
Right? Like I was just, when you're talking, I just brought up to my mind that a lot of like, is, crying in a meeting makes people uncomfortable, but really makes men uncomfortable. Right? The patriarchy uncomfortable. It's the emotions. It's like, why do we not have emotions?
Right.
Right.
I mean,
Keep
our
us
life,
all
I mean,
separated.
KJ, we have emotion. I mean, both of you, Jocelyn and KJ, like, Jocelyn, the words bring out emotion. Like, we don't read books that we don't connect with, and we connect with it because there's an emotion. And then KJ, I mean, if you guys could just talk about that a little bit, how ingrained that is in our society.
Well, as you all were talking, and as always, I take notes because I'm just like, I want to touch base on that, or that lands with me. And I know there's more conversation around it. And so, I was thinking about how, actually, so women, females, in trying to adopt and adapt the standard of what maybe success could be, say in a work situation, or relationally. I was just thinking about sort of this second shift that women are prescribed. If they want to join the table, or if they want to maybe challenge the patriarchy, it's not just one thing to say, like you had said, Ish, it's not one thing to be like, well, we could inject, or we could introduce, or be curious about some of the more feminine qualities, like being emotional in a business meeting. But no, it's more like, and I'm not going to be very articulate, but what I noticed is that in order to be considered a part of the table, not only can you suggest something, like, why don't we do a check-in before we start our meetings, or why don't we do some grounding and meditations before we start our meetings. You not only have to do that, but you also show up with receipts for some of the prerequisites. So I still need to also show you numbers. I still also need to show you logics and facts. And so let me go back to that second shift piece. Women almost still are not even considered successful in the eyes of the patriarchy if they're not doing. So let's say they do have a 9-to-5 job in marketing, and let's say they have a manager's position. They still are expected to go home, cook dinner, make sure the kids are taken care of, picked up from school, homework's done with them. There's a second shift. There's still like her work day has not finished, because she still has to do what has been designated for her as the female, or as the woman in the family, the woman in business. So she can be a business person. She can be in these, say, STEM positions, which is yay. But then she also has to be emotional, has to make sure that everyone's taken care of, has to make sure that everyone's eaten, has to make sure that, the house is clean, because in-laws are coming. That's me, by the way. In-laws are coming in the next few days after my long work day. I have to clean now, even though I've had a full day of work. So I don't know where that falls in. Sorry, I just wanted to say that that's what came up for me.
Well, and the minute you say that, I'm thinking second shift. Well, then what about a third shift? Because it's like there's the kids, then there's a husband. For some women, it goes even further. I mean, you could have like 4 or 5 shifts before you're even like,
what
where
about
does
as
your
entrepreneurs?
come in?
Yeah. What about the entrepreneurs? We're all entrepreneurs. Our business. That's
Yeah,
another
and
shift.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so I mean, we're gonna have a whole nother conversation at some point about self-care, but when
Right.
self-care is like the 12th shift, I mean,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
but
Right. So
well,
so I okay, so I guess what I'm saying is just like, yes, I can maybe consider you equal, or I can consider you pushing past the boundaries and breaking that patriarchal glass ceiling. But is it? Because I've actually just tripled my work. I've just
right,
tripled my work to get the same respect or same place at the
Right.
table that people are doing 3 times less.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Ish about emotions and trying to get people to trying to get people to feel things in a society where feeling things is considered like bad or
Yeah.
suspect or
Mm,
some and working with writers who have been raised to believe that feeling things is bad, getting them to tap back into those emotions is really hard because we put on that, we talked about belonging in the camouflage. You put on that costume to fit into this patriarchal society that is now telling you you've got to do all these things and have 27 shifts. And it's no wonder we're all in like a mental health crisis, because it's untenable at some point. There's an
100%.
implosion. There's no way
100%.
people can stay on this hamster wheel.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
There is I was just trying to look for the name of it, but there is a book written by a woman who like basically was like doing all of these things and was really frustrated with her partner, but kind of really mapped it out how many hours a day, a week, or whatnot that she's putting in all this time, and it was like, here's what I'm doing.
Right.
It was kind of like life changing for their relationship, because it was, oh, okay. It's like, this like data, right? I think,
Right.
KJ, you talked about this. If you're going to go to the meeting and, you can be emotional, but have the data. So like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I for whatever reason, this book that I can't think of the name or the person, comes to mind, but, and that's the thing. It's like, that second shift, I think you just really brought that up very beautifully, because that
Yeah.
is the patriarchy. It's this, why do we feel as
Yeah.
women that we have to do that? There's something innate in our culture that tells us that it's not okay to do your job and to be in a true partnership,
Mm-hmm.
And then you
right?
have to
And
justify with
You have to
data, and
justify.
whether it's
Yeah.
at work or in your relationship or whatever. Then
Yep.
exactly what you're saying, we have to bring this Excel spreadsheets that lay out
Yeah.
all of the moments.
Yeah.
yeah, but I in people that in women that I work with, it's that dichotomy, and these are professional women, is really just very stark, right? It's like, so the partner is going out to go work out, and I'm like, well, they want to work out too. It's like, but I have to do all this. So, and it's like, why is this realization not happening? So when Mel
Right.
talks about, you know I feel oftentimes the burden to change everything is still on the woman. Like, we've got to change the patriarchy, but the
Gotta
burden is
fix
on
it.
the burden is on the patriarchy too, right? Like, we've got
Right.
to, they have to come to the table. Can't change it. We are not the ones who are all, and we're tired. People are
Right.
So
tired.
tired. So tired.
Like, okay,
So
I'm
tired.
tired today. Like, you guys are all like, oh, like summer solstice. I'm like, and I'm like, I'm tired.
Well, and don't you think some of that then becomes that the only that's when I think you get to the burn it down, bring the gasoline and the matches, because I don't know what the hell else to do.
Yeah.
Everything else is too long, too exhausting. Nobody cares. So light the shit on fire. We don't care what happens on the other side of it, because it can't be any worse than this.
Well, and I will say, I mean, I know we're kind of at our time, but I think to that point, part of the challenge that I think women think about more than men do in this binary is we have to think about what's next, right? Because we are the ones thinking about community. We are the ones thinking about the larger family and how to hold things together, because we've been conditioned that it's our job to do that. And so we're so much less likely to burn shit down, because we're like, but then I got to clean up the fire. I
Right.
got to clean up the ashes afterwards.
I'm into cleaning up the mess. Yeah.
Then I
Right,
gotta
and so
bring the spreadsheets and
right, and I still got to bring the spreadsheets and for that stupid 7 o'clock meeting that nobody wants to be at.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and
To
so
explain in
right.
language that they maybe would understand too.
And so that's all of, that all of those pieces are all part of the same ugly system that we're going to be talking about continuously over the summer. And I'll give one last plug to say, please, please, please think about this. Think about how these things are affecting your life. Think about how at work, in your relationships, in your family, in your friend circles, right? How different perhaps you are treated than your opposite gender friends or family members, right? And ways that you might need some help, ways that you might be able to help someone else, right? Because we want to hear about those things. We want to hear about these situations. And again, we don't have all the answers, but we want to talk about it, and I will, while you all were, interestingly enough, just as you were talking about emotions and work and whatever, I finally remembered to pull our card for today, which I'll put up for everybody, which of course, as always, I forget now my camera's in a weird place, so I got to get in a really weird angle. And of course my boobs are in the way. But so
Never in the way.
So,
never boobs are in the way.
oh, that's the
so
patriarchy talking. Boobs are never in the way.
Right.
Never in the
Keep
way.
pulling these cards with men in it.
Okay, hold on, wait. Give me ish. Hang on. Let me make me big for just a second so everybody can see this card.
More cups.
Hmm.
Oh, look at those butterflies.
So what are you seeing, ladies? What's jumping out at you besides me not being able to mirror what this is supposed to do on camera?
I think there's either stealing or sharing going on with that cup. I can't quite tell.
I was leaning towards collaboration. There was like a joint effort with the cup. Maybe this is me being
I think
naive.
that's
I
positive.
feel
I
like the
agree.
person in blue is trying to put a hole in that cup.
Oh, wow.
Oh, ish.
You could punch a hole and steal it.
I give you a little
I
bit
mean,
more
butterflies are all lovely, but that's what I don't know. That's what the sense that I'm getting.
It
I
could
mean,
be
Mel
the
always tells me
passing.
it's whatever you see. In the
For you,
card.
ish, yeah, it's whatever you see. Well, let me bring everybody back.
I think there's a passing, like a passing of the cup.
Right now, I
And
can't
there's
bring y'all back.
something about the butterflies and the transformation.
What are we doing?
Going towards the boat.
Our eternal optimist here.
I
Right.
know.
Oh,
I
there
was
we
just
go.
thinking to myself, I'm like,
love
I think it's
KJ.
great.
I'm Pluto, remember?
I was going to say there's Pluto.
I mean, you're both Pluto. It's funny how you
but
both.
she's like on
but
the
one's
light. She's on
October.
the transformative end. I'm on the let's go deep and dark.
I was gonna say I do
I'm
find a
lifting up.
difference when you're like from month to month, right? Like KJ's right at the end there of October, and Ish is in November. So there's a little bit of a difference there in those Scorpios.
A little bit.
So in general, and I know now I've zoomed back so you can't see it as well, but so this is the Six of Cups. So yes, Cups is about our emotions. Though Ish feels like someone may be trying to be disharmonious, this is generally a card of harmony. This is a card of cooperation, of problem solving, right? And so for me, when I look at this card, it really is, as we talk about this, and I always, my question is kind of what do we need to get across to everyone listening, is thinking about the patriarchy, which is totally shitty, right? Let me start there. Totally shitty, period. But we don't have to just live with that, right? There are ways that we can work together. Some people might try to put a hole in your cup, but there are ways we can work together right? To start planning, to start thinking. This is a very feminine card in that it is about that harmony. It is about that community building and figuring out how we can solve these problems. But we have to do it together, right? We both got to hang on to this cup and pass it back and forth. In order for us to really move forward. And I think the butterflies, I think KJ, it was you that pointed out the butterflies.
Yeah.
That it really is that journey. I mean, it is partially that transformation, but like if we want to set sail, wait, the boat's going this way. If we want to set sail, we have to work together. And I'm trying to give you some animation here too. But it is. And I would also say, because this came up when we were especially talking about emotions and whatnot, I mean, embracing it, like celebrating. I mean, look at those cups. They're out there in the forefront. Like, yes, look at us. Look at all these cups I have, right? So it is about like, look at these emotions. Look at how we're using these emotions to move us forward, So that'll be my end message for today. What did you say, Justin?
Butterflies are our community.
They
Those
are.
Those are all our little people. That's all our little community. Yep.
Wait, I'm trying to give you butterfly motion here with the card.
Low-tech animation.
One step above claymation. Here's what I got going on.
None.
And the woman does it all again. She's the animator.
Right. I got so many. If you knew how many pieces were happening here behind the scenes. So, all right, ladies. If you're feeling better-ish, I will have you take us out. I will just say to everyone, again, we super appreciate you. We love you. We want to support you however we can. We're doing this to support each other and to support you. So please share with us, your experiences, your challenges around these issues, around issues related to gender and the patriarchy and all the ugliness. And we won't give you a solution, but we will give you space for conversation, and we will do our very best to give you ideas and suggestions and thoughts, and as we move forward. So just connect with any one of us. Any one of us are happy to hear from you. And the next episode that we have coming out, we'll start to really do, dig in. Like, what is the patriarchy? What is this even about? What's this got to do with anything? And so when we come back, we'll be digging more into some specifics in that way. So I'm going to stop talking now and give it to you, Ish.
All right. So we're going to exit out today. And, we have started really delving into a heavy topic. And so we're going to exit out by breathing, but we're going to be sighing. And that just is sort of a really good way to sort of let any amount of tension that has developed over the hour, just let it out, or even developed over your day. So go ahead if you feel comfortable and close your eyes. And take some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your nose, or out through your mouth, whichever feels comfortable for you. So let's do a couple of those deep breaths. And now when you take a deep breath in, and when you exhale, sigh, just do a big sigh. So inhale. One more time. Go ahead and return back to your normal breathing. And open your eyes when you feel that you're ready to. And just as you kind of exit the conversation today, just sort of think about that sigh and how your shoulders moved up and down, and how that made you feel. Hopefully letting a little bit of the weight of the world that's on our shoulders, just release it just a bit. So thanks, everybody. And I'm going to echo what Mel said. Please reach out to us, DM us, email us. We want to hear from you, and we really want to hear your stories and your experiences that you've had with the patriarchy, and because we want to delve into those, we want to talk about it.
Yeah. Anything else, KJ, Jocelyn?
Oh, this
All
is
good?
good. Thank you. Mhm.
Love you, ladies. Love you all for watching. Thank you so much. And we will see y'all super soon.